inheritor of those prophets mentioned in Ziyarat al-Waritha, that I examined Imam al-Husayn and Hazrat Adam, Imam al-Husayn and Hazrat Nuh, Imam al-Husayn and Hazrat Musa. And the key point to take away from yesterday's majlis, as I quickly recap, is that Hazrat Musa was a symbol of standing up against an oppressive tyrant, that this was that great miras, that great inheritance which Hazrat Musa left behind. And you find that Imam al-Husayn, he took that inheritance, and until the day of judgment, Imam al-Husayn, he became that symbol for standing up against oppression. And today I move on towards the next line, which says, As-salamu alayka ya waritha Isa ruhillah. That salam be upon you, O Hussein, the inheritor of Isa, the Spirit of Allah. On the first aspect, you find that this discussion, this majlis, has a great contemporary significance within our lives here in the Western world. Because we live in a country where Christianity is the majority religion. That we live in a country where the name of Jesus is mentioned wherever we go, and you find that we have a connecting point and we have the door to interfaith dialogue opening with this discussion, that Imam al-Husayn is indeed the inheritor of Jesus, son of Mary. That, you know, one Christian scholar by the name of Antoine Barrow used to say that had Hussein belonged to us, the Christians, we would say the name Hussein from every minaret, and we would call people to Christianity with the name Imam al-Husayn. That Imam al-Husayn can relate towards these individuals. And you find that the Ahlul Bayt, oftentimes, they would take the name of Hazrat Isa. And the point to note is that when the Ahlul Bayt took the name of Hazrat Isa, it wasn't because they're trying to prove their own truthfulness. No, rather their truthfulness stands on their own. Rather, when the Ahlul Bayt take the name of Isa, it's an honor for Hazrat Isa that Amir al-Mu'mineen is taking his name, not the other way around. And you find that the narrations are plentiful. For example, you find Amir al-Mu'mineen would say that, look at my brother Jesus, look at my brother Isa, that a stone used to be his pillow and the moon used to be his lamp. Further than that, you find a narration of the Prophet says that one day Hazrat Isa, he went to a town. In that town, he found a bunch of people with blue eyes and their faces looked pale. In Arabic, that blue eyes could have been a symbol for cataracts or a disease of the eyes. The Prophet narrates that Hazrat Isa, he told the people of that town that you eat your meat without washing it, and because of that you're having disease. Now you start washing your meat and you won't face any of these problems. So you find that the name of Hazrat Isa is mentioned throughout the narrations of Ali Muhammad. And before I analyze the story of Isa and what miras, what inheritance he left behind, I've been on a pattern of examining what relation he had towards Ahlul Bayt in general. For example, I mentioned that Hazrat Adam and Hazrat Nuh, they're buried within the shrine of Amir al-Mu'mineen. That Hazrat Musa in that valley, when he spoke to the fire, it was in Masjid al-Kufa. And you find that a connection comes between Hazrat Isa and the Ahlul Bayt, and that some of the narrations of Ali Muhammad, that some point towards Bethlehem. But no, other narrations point towards that fact that Hazrat Isa was born within the land of Karbala. That near the Furat, Hazrat Isa was born. You know, the Quran talks about that after Baytul Muqaddas, the Bibi Maryam, she was in Baytul Muqaddas, and the time for her, the birth of Isa came, that Allah commanded her to go off to a far off land. And within Hayat al-Qulub, volume 1, Allama al-Majlisi quotes Shaykh al-Tusi. He quotes Shaykh al-Tusi, a narration of our fourth Imam, Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. He says that that far off land within the Quran where Isa was born was the land of Karbala. That with the power of Allah, Bibi Maryam, in one night she went from Sham towards Karbala and back. Of course, Sham in that time period was a reference towards Palestine, not just Syria. There were other countries, Lebanon, Palestine, Sham in that time period, and he came back. Further than that, you find a narration of our sixth Imam that he was with one of his companions named Yahya bin Abdullah. He says to Yahya after performing a 2-rakat prayer that, "Oh Yahya, do you know what place this is?" That he was near a village near Karbala. The reply comes from the Imam that this is that spot where Maryam laid, and this is that spot where the date palm tree used to be, where she gave birth to Hazrat Isa. So you find that there's a connection between Hazrat Isa and Ahlul Bayt. And when I examine this story of Hazrat Isa and the way Imam al-Hussein is his inheritor, it'll be made in 5 points. The first point, I will analyze the miraculous birth of Isa. The second point, I will look at the status of the mother of Isa. The third point, I will look at the fact that Hazrat Isa is alive. The fourth point is about the realization of Isa. Because in Surah Al Imran, verse number 52, Allah mentions that Hazrat Isa had a realization. And the fifth point, I will analyze that great miras which Hazrat Isa left behind for Imam al-Hussein is that breath of Allah, that breath which we would have, that spirit of Allah. That what did it mean for him to be Ruhullah? And with these 5 points, I will examine how Imam al-Hussein is his inheritor and what he inherited. Now you find that at their births, that there is a connection between Hazrat Isa and Imam al-Hussein from the very onset. And that connection comes in the fact that they were both in the wombs of their mothers for 6 months. That when you look at modern medical sciences, that it's rare for a child to be born prematurely at that level of 6 months, but both Hazrat Isa and Imam al-Hussein were within the womb. They were there for 6 months. And you find that Hazrat Isa, that from his very nature, from his very onset, his birth was miraculous, as you all know, because Hazrat Isa, he was born without a father. You know, our fifth Imam, one day, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, salawatu wa salamu alayhi. Our fifth Imam was asked that you claim that you are the descendants of the Prophet, whereas the lineage continues through the son, not the daughter. Our Imam was asked this question. The Imam replied by saying that there are verses within the Quran which talk about the continuation of the lineage of the prophets, and Hazrat Isa is mentioned within that verse. Now let me ask you, is Isa related to those other prophets through his mother or through his father? They replied through their mother, where the Imam gave an answer. In the same way how every other lineage would continue through their sons, the lineage of our grandfather Rasulullah continued through his daughter Fatimatu Zahra salamullahi alayha. And you find that the story narrates that during the birth of Hazrat Isa, Bibi Maryam, she was at a date palm tree. And Allah talks about in detail within the Quran that when she was by that tree, she was commanded to shake the tree, and the date palms would come down for her to eat, and a stream came from underneath her feet. You know, I ask that every single aspect of the birth of Isa was taken care of, that he was born without a father, that so many miraculous things happened, that she went from one place to another. Could Allah not have made the date palms come down on their own? That a stream came out from her feet. Her son was born without a father. Could Allah not go to the extent of those date palms coming down on their own? The answer comes is that the Quran is a book of concepts. And within those ayats of the Quran, Allah wanted to teach us the concept of tawakkul, of relying upon Allah. That the dates could have come down on their own. But Allah told Maryam, shake the tree, O Maryam, make an effort. And when you make an effort, you will see the fruits of that effort come towards you. That within your life you make dua, but at the same time make an effort towards what you're working for, and you'll find that your dua, it'll come through. That you take one step towards Allah, Allah will take 5 steps back towards you. One salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And you find continuing along the line that Hazrat Isa, that he would speak from the cradle, that he would say, Qala inni Abdullah, atani al-kitaba wa ja'alani nabiya, that I am the servant of Allah, I've been made a Nabi and I've been given the book. That Hazrat Isa had the miracle that he would speak from the cradle. But look at the power of Imam al-Hussein, that when he was in the cradle, he was able to give shafa'ah towards the angels when fitrus came down. That there is a difference between Hazrat Isa and the waris of Hazrat Isa. That from their very birth, there is a connection between these individuals. From their very birth, the virtues of Hussein ibn Ali come out. The second aspect in which Hazrat Isa is mentioned is the status of his mother. That the mention of Hazrat Isa comes in what? It comes in Surah Al-Maryam. That you can't mention oftentimes Hazrat Isa without mentioning his mother. You know that the mother of Bibi Maryam was Janab Hanna, that she was the mother of Bibi Maryam, and she had made another, that if I had a child, he would serve in the mosque, he would serve in Baytul Muqaddas. that he would serve within this. But instead of having a son, she had a daughter, so she went towards Prophet Zakir. She asked him that I had made another to have a son, but I had a daughter. Whereas Prophet Zakir replied by saying, so what? Allow her to serve within Baytul Muqaddas, and you find that she would serve over there. In the same way, this is an example that whenever you have a chance, serve your community, that there is no greater servitude towards the community than helping with the azadari of Imam al-Hussein. That help with this azadari, that whatever you can do, whether it's fix the shoes, whatever aspect, nothing is too small when it comes towards this azadari. You know, Amir al-Mu'mineen in Nahj al-Balagha will talk about what iman is. He says, al-iman ma'rifatun bil-qalb wa ikrarun bil-lisan wa amalun bil-arkan. That iman is having ma'rifat, cognizance within your heart. And then it's about speaking what's within your heart, and it's about acting upon it. You know, I say a line for the azadars of Imam al-Hussein and the iman that the azadars of Imam al-Hussein had, that within your heart is the love of Imam al-Hussein, on your tongue is the words Ya Hussein, and with your hands you have the matam of Imam al-Hussein. One salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. That Bibi Maryam had this status, that she had a great status. But while the status of Bibi Maryam, that she was the best of the women of her time, the Varis of Isa had a mother, the likes of which no one has seen, who was the best of the women of all time. That, you know, Islam was brought to raise the status of a woman. That within that time period, they would bury their daughters, they would view women as properties. But the Islam, every aspect of the way, it showed that a woman has virtues. That the hadith of the Prophet would say that a daughter is a rahmat, a daughter is a mercy, and your sons are a blessing, a nemat. Then further than that, the Prophet would say that when she becomes a wife, that she is a kuf, that she is a partner towards her husband. And that when she is a mother, the hadith of the Prophet says, is that Jannat is underneath her feet. Now look at the status of Fatimatul Zahra, that she was a rahmat for that father who was rahmatul lil alameen. That she was a kuf, a partner for that husband who was kulle iman. And underneath her feet was that Jannat to which her own children were the princes towards that Jannat. That this is Fatimatul Zahra. And the Quran says, Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr wa ma adraka ma laylatul qadr. That, you know, the Quran, as I mentioned on night 2, it has an outward tafsir and it has an inward tafsir. These verses say we revealed it on the night of Qadr, and you can't comprehend what the night of Qadr is. I say, oh Allah, the night of Qadr is that night where the Quran came down on the heart of the Prophet. It's one of the odd nights, 19th, 21st, 23rd, or one of the odd nights of Ramzan, that on this night we do amal, on this night we do this, we do that. That we know what the night of Qadr is. Why are you saying you can't comprehend what the night of Qadr is? And you find that the answer comes from our 6th Imam, where he would say that when the Quran says Laylatul Qadr, this is a reference towards our grandmother Fatimatul Zahra, and the Quran says Wama adraka Laylatul Qadr, that you can't understand what Laylatul Qadr is, thus you can't understand the virtues of our grandmother Fatimatul Zahra. One salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. That Bibi, she had this status within the religion of Islam. You know, when a time came that the Prophet wanted to show the greatness of Fatimatul Zahra, but at the same time there was the hijab of Fatima. That there's two things. There's the azmat of Fatimatul Zahra and there's the hijab of Fatimatul Zahra. Had Fatimatul Zahra been out in the open in every incident in the way Amir al-Mu'mineen was there, then you would find her hijab would be compromised. That you see in every instance, on the night of Shab-e Hijrat, the Amir al-Mu'mineen is there. On the day of Khaybar, he's getting the alam. On the day of Khandaq, he's becoming kulle iman. You find that sometimes he's saying Ali is to me as Harun was to Musa, that all these things, the Prophet wasn't able to have Bibi come out in the open because it would compromise her hijab. So he had to make one statement for that to be understood. You know, I'm from Dallas. If I told you our masjid in Dallas is like this, that the minbar is over here, the lights are over here, the chairs are on one side, I could explain all day, but you won't understand what I'm saying, correct? But if I told you our center in Dallas is exactly like Husaini, you'll know what it looks like. In the same way, the Prophet, he couldn't openly speak about what Fatimatu Zahra is, so he had to make one statement where everyone would understand the status of Bibi Fatimatu Zahra, and that one statement is that if Ali was not there would be no partner for Fatima. That if Ali was not there would be no partner for Fatima. That it was not the other way around. You know, people ask the question, coming back towards Bibi Maryam, is that why did Bibi Maryam not get married? Why did she not get married? And the answer to that is because if you are a masuma, an infallible lady, there has to be an infallible there for you to get married to, so your purity and your taharat could be protected. You know, people come, they further the question, and they say, why was Bibi Zainab not masum? That why was Bibi Zainab not masum? Is it because she sinned, na'uzubillah? No, the answer isn't because she sinned. When historians, they write the name of Bibi Zainab, right next to it, they write mahfuz anil qata, that she was free from every mistake. The reason she wasn't masum is not because she sinned or she made mistakes. The reason is because a masum is officially appointed by Allah, and there are certain conditions put towards being a masum. That had she been a masuma, there would have been no person she would have been eligible to marry at that time, because her partner had to have been a masum. And all the masums at that time, they were her mehram. Further than that, you find that for the sleeping nature, for the sleeping ideology of those people on the side of Yazid, and for humanity to wake up, then some of the hijab of the women, they had to be snatched. You know, Bibi Fatima, when she went into the darbar, into the courtyard of that caliph, what threat did she make? She made the threat that I will remove my hijab. She didn't do it. She just said the words, and the walls of Masjid al-Nabawi, they began to shake and they began to raise. In the same way that for the people, the sleeping people to wake up, the hijab of Bibi Zainab had to be taken. That this was within the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and had she had been a masuma, this would not have been possible. That a masum is officially appointed by Allah. That on one side you have the status of the mother of Isa, and on the other side you have the status of the mother of Imam al-Hussein. The third thing which you find is that Hazrat Isa was alive, and you find that Imam al-Hussein is alive to this day at a higher level. What do I mean by this statement? That Hazrat Isa is alive. As you all know, the Islamic viewpoint is that when he was about to be crucified, it was another man who looked like Hazrat Isa on that cross. But you find that Hazrat Isa, that people will say, that how do you say your Imam is alive? One of the philosophies of keeping Hazrat Isa alive is that so nobody can question the length of the life of the Imam of our time. That Hazrat Isa will come back with him. That a time will come where Hazrat the Imam al-Zaman, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif, where the Imam will say to Hazrat Isa, Taqaddum yabna Maryam, that come forward the son of Maryam, whereas Hazrat Isa will reply to the Imam by saying, Taqaddum yabna Zahra, that come forth the son of Fatimatu Zahra, highlighting the greatness in the position of the grandmother of the Imam. So you find that Hazrat Isa is alive and Imam al-Hussein is alive in what sense? You know, the Quran says, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٍ بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. That don't say those individuals killed in the way of Allah are dead, rather they are alive receiving rizq from their Lord. The Hazrat Isa is alive, but the level of the life of Imam al-Hussein is this, that Imam al-Hussein is passing sustenance to other people because he was killed in the way of Allah. That when we go towards ziyarat, we send salam upon Imam al-Hussein. I ask you, do you send salam upon a dead person or a living person? On somebody who is alive. Further than that, when you enter their shrines, you recite the dua called Idhne Duqul, that you recite the dua of asking for permission towards entering. And what do you say in that dua? You say, Yaruna Makami, wa Yasma'una Kalami, wa Yaraduna Salami, that, oh, whoever shrine you're entering, that you see my maqam, you see my status, you hear my speech, and you reply towards my salam. That this is the level of Imam al-Husayn. One salawat ala Muhammad wa ala. So I analyzed the birth of Isa, the mother of Isa, Isa being alive in the way that the waris of Hazrat Isa is at a stage of life even higher. The fourth thing is from Surah Al-Imran, ayat number 52, where he talks about the ahsas, the realization of Isa. You know, Hazrat Isa, he realized that there was disbelief, there was kufr spreading within his community. So what does the Quran say? It says, فَلَمَّا أَحَسَّ Isa minhumul kufr. He realized that kufr was starting within his society, and then he said what? He said, قَالَ مَنْ أَنصَارِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. Who will be my helpers in the way of Allah? And the Quran says, قَالَ هَوَارِيُّونَ نَحْنُ أَنصَارُ اللَّهِ. That Hazrat Isa said, who will be my helpers in the way of Allah? And the disciples said that we are the helpers of Allah. You know, I asked this question, that this ayat says that who will be my helpers in the way of Allah, that it didn't say who will be the helpers of Allah. Then why are the disciples replying that we are the helpers of Allah? It turns out that if you help the appointed representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are helping Allah. That's why in the ziyarat of the Shuhada of Karbala, we address them by saying, Assalamu alayka ya ansara deen Allah. That before we look at them as the companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen or Bibi Fatima or Imam Hassan or Imam Hussein, we recognize their position as those individuals that would help Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Isa, he said, قَالَ مَنْ أَنصَارِي إِلَى اللَّهِ, and they replied. But the connection between Isa and the waris of Isa is this, is that Hazrat Isa made that call. That he made that call, that who will help me in the way of Allah? And Imam al-Husayn also made that call, which is ala hal min nasirin yansurna. That Imam, Ya Ali, Allahumma salli. And you find that Hazrat Isa made a call, and at that time he made a call, 12 came forth. But when Imam al-Husayn made his initial call, 72 came forth. But there was a difference between the call of Isa and the waris of Isa, Imam al-Husayn. Whereas Isa's call was limited towards a time and a place, the call of Imam al-Husayn is an eternal call towards the end of times. That whatever you can do to help Imam al-Husayn, help Imam al-Husayn. And these majalis are a way of saying labbaik towards the call of Imam al-Husayn. That our sixth Imam would say that go and wander the Jannah, go and wander the heavens upon this earth. They would ask our sixth Imam that does heaven even exist upon this earth? Whereas the Imam would reply by saying, anywhere where the azadari of my grandfather Hussein is happening, that is a heaven upon this earth. That is a heaven upon this earth. And what do we have within this azadari? Yes, we may not have the arsh of Allah like there is in heaven, but at least we have the mimbar of Imam al-Husayn. We may not have the fruits of heaven, but we have the tabarrukat of Imam al-Husayn which we gain. We may not have the pool of Kausar to drink from, but we have the Sabila Husayni to drink from. And then there are certain things which we find in both heaven and in this azadari, that we find that the angels, they come and they attend these majalis, that they come and touch this first Azah. And in the same way you find that the zinat, the thing which beautifies heaven, are those masumeen, they attend this azadari. One salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. That Hazrat Isa, he had a realization that there was kufr spreading, so he needed helpers. And you find that Imam al-Husayn made a realization that in the entire humanity till the end of time was falling, and he needed to step up and he needed to save all of humanity. That Hazrat Isa was worrying about his time period, where Imam al-Husayn was worrying about the safety of the religion until the day of judgment. That this was the fourth thing, the realization of Isa. And the fifth and final thing, the great miras which Hazrat Isa left behind, was that breath of his which would bring the spirit of Allah into an individual. Ruh Allah. That why is Hazrat Isa called Ruh Allah? that he's called Ruhullah, because if there was a dead person over there, he was able to breathe into that person and that person would come to life. You know, people, they hear about the miracles which our imams would perform. You know, I reply by saying that there are hadiths mentioned in both our sources and non-Shia sources that say that, they say, Ana hayyun la amut, that I am that ever-living who never dies. If you obey me and you stay away from those prohibited things, I will make you the ever-living that never dies. That I am the one who says, kun fayakun, be and it becomes. Obey me and stay away from those things which I prohibited, then you will become that person who says to something, be, and it'll become. That this is a hadith mentioned for a regular person. But what is the condition mentioned upon that? The condition is that you do halal and you stay away from haram. In other words, that if you are masoom. Another hadith says that if you obey Allah for 40 days, and this is not just within our sources, it's in other sources as well, that if you obey Allah for 40 days, then your face will become Allah's face, that your tongue will become Allah's tongue, that if a normal person obeys Allah for 40 days, and reaches this status, what about if there's an individual who his entire life he obeyed Allah? Then what's wrong with calling him Wajhullah, the face of Allah? What's wrong with calling him Lisanullah, the tongue of Allah? What's wrong with calling him Huznullah, the ears of Allah? What's wrong with calling him Jambullah, the side of Allah? What's wrong with calling him Yadullah, the arms of Allah? What's wrong with calling him Babullah, the door to Allah? What's wrong with calling him Nur Allah, the light of Allah? That if a normal person has that status, what's wrong with calling Amir al-Mu'mineen that? And you find that this example is highlighted within the stories of our ulama. That our ulama of Ahlul Bayt, those rightful ulama, you would find that they would be able to perform miraculous deeds themselves because of the piety which they had. You know, there's a story that one marja from Najaf, he goes towards India. When he goes towards India, over there were soothsayers, these people that would practice psychic abilities. So one of these soothsayers, there was a flock of goat in front of him. He starts thinking, in front of the marja, he starts thinking, he starts pondering, doing his calculation, and that flock of goat, they died. The marja asked him that, how did you do this? He replied by saying, I did this by staying away from certain things. He said, what are those things? He said that I would stay away from meat, I would stay away from women, I wouldn't eat any sweets, I wouldn't do this, I wouldn't do that, and he gave a long list. The marja said, can you do anything more than this? He replies by saying, I can't do anything more than this. And then the marja says, then watch what I can do. He says, kun bi'idhnillah, be by the power of Allah, and you find that it came back to life. That psychic, he asked the marja, that how did you do this? He replies by saying, I did this by eating meat. I did this by getting married. I did this by eating sweets. Every single thing which he mentioned on that list, the marja said that I would do those things. But there is one thing which I would do, that everything which is halal, I would go towards that, and everything which is haram, I would stay away from that. Then the marja continues, you want to see what else I can do? He says, you see that stream over there? I can make that stream stop. At that moment, he looks at the stream and he says that the servant of Ali is telling you for this stream to stop, and that stream, it stopped right there. At that point, the soothsayer, he says towards the marja that whoever's name you must have taken, he must be the master of all masters. That he must be the master of all masters. And you find Hazrat Isa, he had this ability, that one narration says that one of Hazrat Isa's, his friends passed away. When his friend passed away, he goes to the house of the mother of that friend. He tells the mother the news. She starts crying. Hazrat Isa says, don't cry. Let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can do. So he goes to the graveyard where the friend is buried. He goes over there. He puts his hand on the grave, and his friend, he came back to life. He says that I had passed away. How did I come back to life? He said, I said, kun bi-idhnillah. That whenever in the Quran Isa would perform a miracle, he would say, I performed it by the permission of Allah. That there's a wisdom behind this, that Allah knew that there would be a group of people who would exaggerate his abilities and take him as God. So Allah didn't want any doubt to be there within the Quran for individuals to do the same. And you find that person, he came back alive, and Hazrat Isa said that I am giving you 20 years. That this is the power of the wali, the representative of Allah, that I am giving you 20 years. And you find similarly, there's a story related towards Imam al-Hussein. That there's a scholar by the name of Abdul Karim al-Hayri, that he is the founder of the Hawza Ilmiya in Qom. They said towards Abdul Karim al-Hayri that how did you get this Hawza, that how hard did you work for this? He replied by saying that everything from this Hawza, everything which I did is from Hussein ibn Ali. They asked him, what do you mean? He replies by saying, when I was in Najaf al-Ashraf, that I was on my deathbed, and I was about to die, and I saw Malik al-Maut. And when I saw Malik al-Maut, I spoke towards Malik al-Maut, and I said to him that I have the plans of creating a Hawza, that I have the plans of doing work in the way of Imam al-Hussein. Malik al-Maut said that your time to go has come. At that point, I saw the light of Imam al-Hussein come, and he spoke towards Malik al-Maut, and he said towards Malik al-Maut that he is working within my way, extend his life. And Imam al-Hussein extended his life by 20 years. In the way that Isa extended the life of his companion by 20 years, this is what the Waris of Isa did. That this is what the Waris of Isa did. One salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And you find further than that, that Hazrat Isa would have to touch an individual to come back to life. But you find that with Imam al-Hussein, the Waris of Isa, anything which touches Imam al-Hussein is able to heal and give shafa'ah. That Isa had to physically touch someone or blow on someone. But Imam al-Hussein, even that grave, even that dust from his grave becomes khaki shafa'ah. That this is the Waris of Isa, and on the other side there is Isa. And as I mentioned, that great miras, that great inheritance which Hazrat Isa left behind is the ability to breathe into something and for that to come to life. And if you remember anything from this majlis, if you remember one point from what Hazrat Isa left behind for Imam al-Hussein, remember this sentence. And the sentence is this, is that Hazrat Isa was the spirit of Allah. He was Ruh Allah, because he would breathe into a body and bring it back to life. But the Waris of Isa is that individual. He breathed into the religion of Islam and he brought the religion of Islam back to life. That Isa is on one side and the Waris of Isa is on the other side. That Imam al-Hussein saw that the religion of Islam was falling. That a leader like Yazid was on the minbar. A leader like Yazid was controlling the affairs of the Muslim Ummah. But Imam al-Hussein knew I had to make a stand. I have to make a sacrifice, and he made that sacrifice. And because within him the ability to sacrifice is there and save the message of the prophets, he is the Waris of the Anbiya. That he is the Waris of the Anbiya. And I conclude upon this point. And inshallah tomorrow I'll analyze those great lines. As-salamu alayka ya waritha Muhammadin Habibillah. That tomorrow, that the weight of Imam al-Hussein being the inheritor of the other 5 prophets is on one side. But this line is a great line which I'll analyze tomorrow. But you find that tonight, we remember that person who also received an inheritance. That they say that when Amir al-Mu'mineen was struck with that poisoned sword, that he left some inheritance for his son Imam Hassan, and he left some inheritance for Imam al-Hussein. That the inheritance which he left for his Hassan was the poison, and the inheritance which he left for Imam al-Hussein was that strike of the sword which Imam al-Hussein received on the day of Ashura. You find that Imam al-Hassan, a time had come where the body of Imam al-Hassan was in pain from the poison. That they say the liver of Imam al-Hassan came out in 72 pieces. That remembering this, only Allah knows what Imam al-Hussein must have remembered when he saw the face of Qasim. That Qasim is that shaheed who the Imam didn't want him to go towards the maqtal. That when the Imam was reciting the list of the shuhada, Qasim was standing there listening towards that list. The Imam, he would call a name. He would say Abbas's name. He would say Hazrat Ali Akbar's name. But the name of Qasim wasn't called. He comes towards the Imam and he says, "Oh Mawla,
Why was my name not called? The Imam replies, "Oh Qasim, what do you think about death?" Qasim, he says, "Death to me is sweeter than honey." The Imam, he continues speaking to Qasim. He mentions to Qasim, "Oh Qasim, that Ali Asghar will also be killed." Whereas Hazrat Qasim says that will they come towards the tents? Little did he know a time would come in Karbala that Imam al-Hussein would go asking for water, and in return for water he would get a spear in the neck of Ali Asghar. That Hazrat Qasim, that the day of Ashura had come, Hazrat Qasim would come ask for permission. The Imam, he would reject that permission. He would say, "Oh Qasim, you look like my brother Hassan. Oh Qasim, oh Qasim, your mother went through a lot when your brother Hassan was murdered. Oh Qasim, give support towards your mother." But Qasim, he would go back crying. He would go back crying. But at that moment his mother says to Qasim, "Oh Qasim, when your father was passing away, he wrote something for your brother Hussein, for your uncle Imam al-Hussein." Hazrat Qasim, he takes that letter towards Imam al-Hussein. Imam al-Hussein, he opens the letter, and on that letter he sees the writing of his brother. He sees the writing of his brother. Imam al-Hussein must have remembered those moments when the liver of his brother was coming out. The history narrates that he puts his hands around Hazrat Qasim, that both of them begin to cry. That Hazrat Qasim, that they both begin to cry. Hazrat Qasim, he's going towards the maqtal. When he's going towards the maqtal, the Imam would cover his face. He would say, "Oh Qasim, don't let the enemy see the beauty of your face." That Qasim is on the maqtal. He went towards the battlefield. A time had come where they couldn't stop Hazrat Qasim. So Umar bin Saad says, "Surround him from all sides." That from all sides they surrounded Qasim. Eventually a sword comes on the head of the son of Imam al-Hasan. That blood is covering his eyes. He doesn't know where to go. But at that moment his sandal gets caught, and the body of Qasim is being dragged around the plains of Karbala. They say that the body of Qasim was broken into pieces. That Imam al-Hussein, when he came to collect that body, he saw the pieces of Qasim. He didn't know how to pick those pieces up. So he puts his abaya on the ground. He puts the pieces of Qasim in there. He goes back towards the tents. When he goes towards the tents, he sees Farwa, who says that, "Did you bring my Qasim? Did you bring my Qasim?" She didn't know that Imam did, but he brought the pieces of ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Ya Allah, we ask through the right of Fatima to Zahra and that blessed progeny. Ya Allah, we pray for those who are oppressed from amongst our followers, whether it's in Bahrain, whether it's in Saudi Arabia, whether it's in Pakistan, whether it's in Iraq or wherever it may be. Ya Allah, we pray for those who are sick and ailing, and Ya Allah, ultimately we pray for the reappearance of our Mawla Sahib al-Zaman. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم